Hello everyone and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live, How Can L&D Finally Prove Business Impact? I'm Cassie Gasson, Chief Marketing Officer here at Thrive.
I'm Ryan O'Connell, the Chief Operating Officer.
And we are going to get started in a couple of minutes. We're just going to give some time to let people join. We are also going to give you some time to write in the chat. So if you can send us any messages, just saying hello or letting us know where you're joining from today, that would be really brilliant. So we can kind of get interaction going on the chat because there's going to be a lot of fun interaction and maybe mini activities for you to get involved in today. So if you can just start writing in the chat, we'll get started in a couple of minutes. Just waiting for any messages. Well, it's not 12 o'clock yet, is it? So I think we should probably get going. Should we get cracking?
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, perfect. So we've got some messages. Good morning, John. Joining us from Pennsylvania. Ali joining us from sunny London. Lewis joining us from Czech Republic. Michael, welcome. Johannesburg. Okay, perfect. All of your comments coming through. Hi, Kim from Bedford. Okay, loads of people coming through. Perfect. So we are going to get stuck straight into some interaction. So have all of your keyboards at the ready and we're going to get started. Awesome. So just to introduce myself again for anyone else that has just joined, I'm Cassie Gasson, the Chief Marketing Officer here at Thrive.
I'm Ryan O'Connell, the Chief Operating Officer.
Awesome. And today we are here to talk about business impact, but we actually wanted to get started with understanding where all of you are on your journeys so far. And I think a really good place for us to do that is actually starting with what's in our control. So if you can use the chat function today to answer this simple question, do you have team goals or KPIs set up? So this can be learning or L&D team goals, any KPIs that you set to measure your team's performance and your team's learning. It would be great for us to know kind of where you're at in your journey and if you have current team goals set up already.
Absolutely.
So I'll leave a couple of minutes for you guys just to post in the comments. I know there's a kind of few second delay on our end to actually kind of get to some of your comments. So we are already getting some comments in. Yes, brilliant. That's great to hear. Kelly says yes. John says yes. Lewis, yes. Any no's around? Anyone? And it's okay if there is any no's. Anyone doesn't have team goals set up?
Look at that. Lots of goals.
Lots of goals. Brilliant. That's what we're here today and that's what we love to see. So second question, and the big challenge that we come across and is what we're actually looking to solve today, actually understanding how we can measure the impact of learning activity on the wider business. So now type into the comments if you know what your business or organisation's objectives or goals are. So you don't need to know the detail, you don't need to know how they're being measured specifically. So obviously we asked the KPIs question in the previous slide, but just what is your business looking to achieve? Simple yes and no answers. I can see Kimberly has said, I have goals, but no KPIs. That's brilliant, Kimberly. I think there'll be lots of learnings here today that Ryan and I will talk through around KPIs and kind of how to set them. So that's brilliant news. So are we aware of our business's objectives? Stephanie, yes. Kelly, yes. John, yes. Loads of yeses. Alexandra, yes. Okay, brilliant. Perfect. So what the question is now, and this is the last question before we kind of delve into the 6 steps that we promised to take you through today, is if you replied yes to both times, that's brilliant. You're in a really good position. But what we want to know is, are the 2 goals aligned? So when you were thinking about those team goals and KPIs that you already have set, and you're thinking about those business objectives and those business goals, actually, are the 2 objectives aligned? So if you can, again, way more yeses than no's, put in the chat, are those 2 objectives that you just went through that you were thinking about aligned to each other? So just wait a couple of minutes or so for you to kind of put those answers in the chat as well.
Yeah, so it looks like there's a lot of people who've got both business objectives and team goals set up, and I think that's a pretty healthy place to be in, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think that's the thing that what we want to do today is kind of help you align those two goals if they are not aligned already. And one of the really interesting things that we found is actually last year alone, we found that only 20% of projects within our industry delivered real business outcomes. So for those of you that are saying no, that they're not aligned, you're not alone. Only 20% of data projects are aligned to real business outcome or real business objectives. So yes, we've got Kimberly, goals and objectives are aligned. Yes, 95% of the time. Love that, John. Charles, not really. That's okay, Charles. That's this exercise that we're going to do today is really going to help some of that. Kelly, some are. Brilliant. Okay, cool. Over to you, Ryan. Let's get into it.
Okay, so what we've worked on is a kind of sort of 6-step method to sort of really go through aligning learning objectives with real business objectives, so that what we're ensuring is that L&D is providing real value and impact within their organisations. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to skip straight to the first one, which is all about starting with that mindset shift. So the key to any campaign is really kind of sort of mapping out what it is that you want to achieve, starting with that company goal and objective that we talked about in the first few slides there, and ensuring that you're really aligning to that. So anything you're looking to do in L&D is aligned to that business goal, and then working backwards. So you've got the business goal, then you're going to need to set some KPIs that will really help measure the success. For example, you might create a learning campaign all about diversity and inclusion, and maybe that's aligned to an employee engagement objective. So you want to sit down and map out what is it you actually want to achieve? What are those measures, those KPIs, beyond just simply learning engagement metrics? And part of that mindset shift is really thinking like a marketer and thinking like a data analyst. And I think that's going to become a bit of a common theme throughout the rest of this session, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So tapping into data analysts and marketing mindset is something really important. One thing that we found, that we noted research from Gartner, said they expect 85% of data science projects fail. So why do they fail? Why aren't they adding the appropriate value? It's a really interesting question. And the biggest factor we know is that ultimately there's a lack of a clear and well-defined plan when you're going into those data science projects. So a data analyst and also a marketer will always start with understanding what's the real problem they're trying to solve, and what their audience wants and needs, so they can then define the methods to really address the right people. Lots of projects fail because people just jump straight into the data tools and technology without adapting their mindset first. So that's why the first step is really this mindset shift. It's really important to think like a data analyst and think like a marketing manager. So step one, set a hypothesis. What's your mission? What's your objective? What is it you're trying to achieve? And really understanding how it is you're going to measure that success. Understanding your audience, personas. Cassie, your chief marketing officer, you do this all the time. Marketers do this all the time. So looking at that audience, looking at who those personas are within the audience, so that you can really ensure that you're tapping into what they need and want. So approaching learnings like campaigns, like marketing campaigns, is a really powerful way to ensure there's a bit of an impact. And then adopting the data analyst mindset of constantly measuring and analysing the activities, the work that you're doing, and then experimenting and making iterative changes as often as possible. So that first step is all about mindset shift.
Brilliant. And your second step is all about the plan. So now it's time to outline your success plan. So here's some questions on screen to kind of ask yourself. So what goals are you looking to set? So start with that objective, whether it's, your campaign, the initiative that you've got to run, the program, or even looking at your strategy as a whole. Start with what you're trying to achieve. How is what you've outlined kind of aligned to your business objectives? So how that exercise that we did earlier on, how are the two aligned and how do the two marry up? Do they feed into each other? And then have a look at what activity actually needs to be identified. So force yourself to think about that objective and how you're going to drive it forward. So when planning out tasks in this way, you start to adopt that mindset of thinking about how you'll impact the bigger picture. And then that last question there around behaviours and considering what behaviours you want to change within your audience, within your learners.
And I think that last point is a really, really important point. And what we talk about when we're talking with customers about designing impactful learning experiences is this kind of sort of method that we've got on screen here, where essentially what we want people to do is to create training that is going to, or to create learning experiences really, which is going to result in that behavioural change. So how do we do it? We follow this methodology. So we start by looking at the objectives or goal. What is it? Again, what is it you're trying to achieve? For example, you're trying to, I don't know, reduce the number of accidents in the warehouse. You're trying to increase the number of subject access requests completed in time. It could be anything, but you should start by really understanding what it is that you want to change. Then, as we said before, we'll go straight to looking at the KPIs. So what are the measurable results that will help define the success of those learning experiences? And then we get to the really exciting bit. And this is, I like to call this performance architecting, which is where we're essentially asking ourselves, whose behaviours need to change and how in order to deliver against this objective. And really, we can start to employ some kind of behavioural science here. So Cassie, do you remember the 3 behavioural blockers that stop people behaving in a certain way?
I do, and Ryan tested me on this knowledge earlier, if any of you are interested. So it is opportunity, motivation, and capability. That's
exactly it. So 3 behavioural blockers. Capability is the first one. So that is people don't know how to act or behave in a particular way. So maybe they need training on how to operate a forklift truck. That could be a capability. The next one is opportunity. That's making sure that people have the right resources at the right time. So we can look at that as kind of learning in the flow. And the final one is motivation. So that's, I do know how to drive a forklift, but maybe I don't understand the importance of driving it safely. So once you understand the behavioural blockers, then we can sort of get into that final step of looking at the learning experience and designing learning experiences that can really result and drive that behavioural change, which again is then going to lead to KPIs being hit and objectives being goal, or certainly objectives being reached, certainly getting you closer to that. So it's a really, really good method, and it's one that we've seen work really successfully with our customers for sure.
And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to take you through that activity with us. So Ryan and I have delivered this workshop in person a fair few times with different customers. And what we're doing today on the webinar is giving you a little taste of how you can run a similar activity. So we're going to need some audience participation in this next bit. And Ryan, if you want to talk a little bit about the task we're going to do, and then I'll kind of get the chat going and getting them to kind of take part in what we need them to do.
Yeah, so the first thing we want you to do is in the comments, write down the name of a company or brand that you want us to run this activity on. So think of definitely a famous company, hopefully one that I've heard of, that really inspires you or that you find really interesting. And what we're going to do is we're going to work through an activity where we're going to run through how we could create a learning experience for that particular company that's going to result in a goal. So the first thing we want people to add is goals and companies and brands. And then the second, you can see on screen, we've got 6 high-level company objectives, from revenue, profitability, all the way down to innovation. In the comments, type the number that correlates to the objective that you want us to focus on. We'll pick one from the comments. And then we're going to run through this session together where we're going to look at this company, we're going to look at the objective, and then we're going to come up with the goal, the KPIs, whose behaviours need to change. We're going to use those methods of thinking like a marketer and thinking like a data analyst. And I'm definitely nervous. I hope it's a company that I've heard of.
So please, now's the time. Choose a company, any brand that inspires you. So Charles is wearing Adidas, and that's the one he likes. And he picks number 3, so customer satisfaction. Kelsa has chosen number 2, profitability. So keep them coming, and then I will choose one for Ryan. And I think for us, what this kind of shows is that we can do this with kind of any organization and any kind of business goal. So it'll all come clear as we run through this. So we've got Kelsa saying Google, and she wants profitability. Disney, Kimberly, okay, number 4, employee engagement. Keep them coming. We'll give you a few more seconds. HelloFresh, really nice one. 4, so that's employee engagement. Whoop, I assume you mean the Whoop band and not just being like, woo. Although I love it if you're just excited. Nike, and then revenue. Brilliant. Thanks, Reese. Someone's chosen number 6, innovation. Rebecca, Aldi. Should we choose? Do you want me for me to choose?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to go in. I am going to go Adidas, I think, and I'm going to go customer satisfaction. I feel like Charles has put in number 1, and I'm going to go with that. Loads are coming in as well. Colin said Twitter. Twitter's, Twitter's a tough one.
Hot topic, yeah.
Hot topic, trending. Okay, so we're going to go Adidas, and you've chosen customer satisfaction. So we're going to go straight into it, shall we?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we really urge you to do is kind of play along at home. So I'm going to ask Ryan a set of questions that kind of follow this process that you can see on screen. And what I want you to do at home is write your answers along with Ryan as he answers them out loud. So I will ask the question, and then you guys play along at home or in the office, wherever you are, and write down your answers. If we've got time at the end, we'll go through some of your answers as well, because you might have had something different, and we'll also play it out now between Brian and I, so you can see how we might approach Adidas and customer satisfaction. So, Ryan, step number 1 that we want you guys to do is actually set a goal that feeds into the high-level objective of customer satisfaction. So you work at Adidas, and you need to set a goal that kind of feeds into customer satisfaction.
So yeah, obviously huge brand name. I'm glad it's definitely one that I've heard of. So yeah, probably the first one, the goal that we're going to go for is to be recognised as a market leader in the world of trainers, footwear, something like that. So that's kind of the goal, and it's going to feed into customer satisfaction because we want people to really enjoy the experience of shopping with us. And I'm going to choose 2 different types: shopping with us in store and shopping online, because I think it's obviously quite a popular way. So our goal is to increase customer happiness and satisfaction shopping in store and online. So that's going to feed into that customer satisfaction higher level objective.
Amazing. And if you guys have thought of your goal, please do feel free to put it in the chat as well. So with that, Ryan, how might you measure whether or not the goal has been achieved? So what KPIs are you looking to set?
Okay, so we're going to use NPS. I think it's a pretty common one, but we're also going to survey people online. So after they've checked out or after they've received their goods, we're going to send them a survey, and we're going to say, like, how was your experience? How did you find, locating the trainers online, and the whole experience from visiting our site to receiving your lovely trainers. But we're also going to do NPS for people leaving our stores, to really kind of sort of gauge what do customers think about us, what do they think about our products, and what do they think about the whole retail experience of buying for us. So we're going to use NPS and customer surveys to really kind of measure. And look, a company like Adidas, we're probably already doing that. So what that means is we probably have a baseline measure today, and we're going to look to see an increase. So I probably want to increase customer satisfaction in the UK by 20% over the next year. Brilliant.
And I think that's the important bit, right? Is adding that percentage, adding that KPI, adding that something that you can measure against. Okay, now on to behaviour. So whose behaviours in that organisation need to change in order to meet that goal, and how might they change?
Yeah, so obviously I've sort of gone for 2 approaches here. We're looking at the bricks and mortar store, but also the online experience. So I've got sort of 2 very clear and quite different personas that we're looking to sort of target. So the first is obviously the shop assistants, the retail staff, the greeters, everybody that you can see in the store. Yeah. So that's kind of my first set of personas. We do have other people who can sort of influence that. We could look at area managers, store managers. We could even look at some of the head office staff. But for this, I'm going to really target the boots on the ground retail staff who are actually providing that direct experience. So that's the first set. And the second set, I'm going to be looking at the web development team. So who is it that's looking after the whole e-commerce experience, everything from the UI and UX of the site to really designing that whole shopping flow that you're going to be going through. So 2 very different sets of personas. I'm looking at how their behaviours need to change. Let's take the more, let's take the developer one first.
Mm-hmm.
So what we want to ensure is that they're not just designing a site that is, that is functional. We want to delight our customers, and most organizations can have sort of similar aspirations, right? So I want to encourage our developers to be brave, to really not be afraid to try things out of the box that are going to set us apart. We're a global brand, we're leading, we want people to really enjoy the experience. So to try something different, to really kind of sort of generate the best shopping experience you can. For the retail staff, we want to really sort of make sure that they are very customer focused,
Mm-hmm.
that they're doing all the right behaviours, that they're really responsive to people in store, they're not just standing around chatting, all of that kind of stuff. So really we'll be kind of sort of looking to kind of motivate them to understand why a great shopping experience is good, not just for Adidas, not just for that particular store, but them and their team and everything like that.
Love it.
So we can start to look at sort of two different learning experiences potentially. So let's go with our web development team,
Mm-hmm.
and there might be a bit of a sort of capability thing. So let's make sure that they've got access to experiences that can really help ensure that the user experience of shopping is really front and foremost. It's not just about developing websites with strong code and good labeling. We really want to kind of sort of delight them with the flow. With the people in store, maybe it's a bit more motivation.
Yeah.
Maybe we want some stakeholder videos from maybe the UK CEO, maybe an area manager, talking about why that shopping experience is really important and what makes Adidas special, what makes the experience at Adidas special. So that's kind of sort of talking through the whole flow there.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of, I think you already answered them, but some of those questions that I would have asked Ryan as well is around those behavioural blockers. So you mentioned them around motivation, and then also what those learning experiences are.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys played along at home or in the office or wherever you are, and if you did, please put your answers in the chat, and if we've got time at the end, we can maybe do a little bit of a show and tell and read some of your answers out. Awesome. So let's go on to step number 3. So in terms of step number 3, it is so important to kind of not only identify those learners, those personas, those people that we just spoke about, but actually who else is involved as well? Who else is involved in your project? Who do you need to loop in? And also who signs off all of this activity? So we're going to talk a little bit around kind of more experimenting when it comes to projects. Actually, who signs those experiments off, and what do you need from people like managers and operations leaders, and kind of what subject matter experts do you need to loop into to your project? The whole point of this communication stage is like identifying those stakeholders and those people earlier on and addressing any challenges that you might be presented with in terms of buy-in and support of your project. So this is all about kind of getting people looped in and communicating what you're doing with other people. And a big bit about this is positioning your project. So it's all about kind of positioning your product and getting creative. When we are communicating, we're fighting for people's time and attention, right? So we have to stand out from the crowd. And this is where kind of engagement really links up with impacts, because if we're not gathering enough momentum, if we're not engaging people with creative, if we're not engaging our learners and sustaining that engagement, ultimately how are we going to measure any activity, right? So it does start with engagement, and it starts with engaging people with what the messages that you're trying to get out. And so this step number 3 is all about communication and your communication strategy and how you're going to get people on board. So to go to the next slide, we do have an activity which we would love you to screenshot and try at home. We're not going to play this one out because I don't think you want to see us, drawing silly pictures for 10 minutes. But when we've done this in person, it works really well, and I'll show you a few examples in a minute. So, ultimately, the question that I want to ask you is, if you had a billboard in Times Square, and this sounds really random, but hear me out. If you had a billboard in Times Square that every single learner you were trying to reach and every single stakeholder you want buy-in from is guaranteed to see, what would you put on it? And you can think about this in the context of Adidas and the example that Ryan just went through in terms of designing those learning experiences, the learning experience that you've just designed. if you were to create a billboard for that learning experience, or potentially in our digital state, create a campaign banner that everyone's going to see on your learning platform, what would be on that? What's the hook? What does your messaging look like? Do you have a slogan? What does the creative and the imagery look like on that billboard? What are you going to put on it that creates an emotional connection? And I think this is a really fun activity to scribble on an A3 piece of paper and have a go at home and really get that marketing hat on and thinking, actually, I've got this really good opportunity to engage not only my learners, but my stakeholders, and I don't have much time to do it. How am I going to do that? So just to go through some examples here and show you some inspiration, I'll run through the bottom two first. I don't think the GIF has pulled through on that bottom right one, but that's okay. Technical difficulties always happen when you're streaming live.
Yep.
I mean, it's not quite live television, but it's LinkedIn Live, so similar. But I will share that GIF on our LinkedIn after this session, and I'll talk you through it now. So the bottom examples are from one of our customers, Princes. They were trying to engage people with the launch of their new platform. So they created all of these fun little creative imagery pieces, and they all have funny slogans on them, like "We just can't bottle it up anymore." The pathways is evolving, which is what their platform's called. The example on the right was actually a GIF that we created for our content customer, Morrison's, which had pictures of feta come in, and it said something along the lines of, "It doesn't get much feta than this. Thrive is launching now." And as I said, I will post that one so that you can all see that example. But the top example is the one I really want to focus on. So when we ran this workshop last at our recent customer event, Level Up Live, one of the groups that we got, they company was, actually, see if you can guess what the company that they got is. Put that in the chat. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds and then I'm going to reveal it. So their company was Amazon. They got Amazon, and the goal for them was corporate social responsibility.
That's right.
So they went down the route of looking at the environment and looking at how they can improve sustainability. And they went through the exercise that Ryan just ran through with Amazon as the example, and with corporate social responsibility as the goal. And this is the creative they came up with. And I think it kind of speaks volumes in terms of how you can address your learners. So imagine that as a campaign banner on your learning platform. Size matters. And I think that is really, really important. It's a really important message, but it's also funny. It's also a funny message. It also creates that emotional connection with people. It gets an emotional reaction out of people. And I think that's definitely what that group of L&D leaders did when they designed it.
Yeah, definitely. And it creates that kind of emotional connection there, doesn't it, Cass? So yeah, it's great. So we've gone through sort of communication. Now we're into sort of execution. You've got your hypothesis about how you can deliver a learning experience that's really going to drive that behavioural change, lead to those KPIs being hit, that goal being met. So let's get ready to hit the big red button and deploy that learning experience. So obviously you're getting your content ready. Perhaps you want to record a stakeholder video. If you're learning experience is going to sort of motivate kind of behavioral change. Create content which is going to lead to people understanding how to do things, or create resources so they can learn in the flow, so they can act in the moment, and really kind of sort of make sure that learning experiences are tackling those behavioral blockers and driving behavioral change. And that's really important. So what we'll do now is we'll run through a few examples. And I guess probably the first thing to say is to remember that behavioral change rarely results from a single point in time learning intervention. So we definitely find that where companies plan campaigns with multiple releases, it really helps ensure that the message sticks. And also to think about, look, could you encourage user-generated content? Can you get your users involved in sharing how they would, they would tackle a particular problem? It's a really, really powerful way to ensure that there's more authenticity with any learning experiences you're creating. You're getting them to contribute to the whole learning experiences, sharing their own best practices and their own interpretations of your corporate message. Really look at a kind of multi-channel approach. And again, I'm sort of trying to think like a marketer here, making the best use of everything that you've got available to you, whatever technologies you use, from kind of learning campaigns to instructor-led events. I know it's a bit of an old-fashioned term, but we could be talking about kind of, sort of broadcasts. We could be talking about lunch and learns or fireside chats or whatever you have within your organization. Making use of the mobile app. If you've got a mobile app, you can push learning kind of sort of experiences, learning campaigns out. So you're reaching those deskless workers, looking at making sure that whatever kind of learning platform you're using, you're configuring your homepage to ensure that the learning experience is super easy to find. It's front and center, depending on the importance and the prominence in which you want it to have. And really making sure that people can understand what's important to the organization, how it's important to them, and how they can adapt or moderate their behavior to ensure that you're all aligned to that same business goal or objective. And then, so I've just been thinking like a marketer, and now I'm going to take that hat off and put my data analyst hat on and think about how I'm going to constantly analyze and iterate and look for those sort of small improvements. So we want to kind of experiment to drive behaviors and results forward as much as possible. So we've got a hypothesis. So for example, if we create brilliant GDPR training, we're going to have fewer ICO fines and data breaches over the course of the year. It's a pretty safe hypothesis, right? But we need to test and iterate. So maybe you believe that everyone needs to know how to handle data securely and respond to subject access requests. So we're going to push out some training and everyone passes the test with flying colors. But because we're thinking like a data analyst, we're going to measure, and perhaps we're going to see there's little or no measurable improvement after this, even though everyone has passed their test. So what we might do is we might then start experimenting and think, okay, well, we thought it was a capability issue. Maybe it's a motivation issue. So maybe we'll create a stakeholder video talking about why it's important to get it right, what's important to us as a company, what's important to you as individuals, really trying to kind of motivate that behavioral change. Or maybe we're going to create a campaign. Let's again use some of that user-generated content, get people to contribute, how they deal with subject access requests. I know it's not always, data security is not always the most interesting topic, so anything we can do to kind of get end user buy-in, to kind of increase that motivation, but we can keep experimenting, measuring and looking for those improvements in the results. And look, we've talked about a few bigger things you can do. You can even do little things like, you can tweak the content titles, the campaign wording, even
testing with different audiences as well.
A/B
different
testing.
Things might land with different departments or different, even different kind of just people, seniorities, passions, interests, things like that. So it's really, really good to think about how you can test and analyze with different groups of learners as well.
Yeah, and again, that's where we're going to keep mentioning it, but we're thinking like a marketer and we're thinking like a data analyst there. So there's all sorts of things that we can experiment on, and we'll be in a almost constant state of doing that. Now, the next thing to think about is that difference between correlation and causation. So you may start to see a correlation between your learning and engagement and the behaviour changes leading to that sort of performance improvement. So let's take an example. Let's take a retail company. We're actually going to use a real example. Who's the retail company, Cass?
And Summers, one of our lovely customers.
Yeah, and they actually noticed that there was a strong correlation between the highest performing stores in terms of turnover, revenue, and the stores that had the highest levels of engagement in their learning platform. Right, and that's great. We can see a correlation. That's a really, really good place to start. But then what we want to do, and what we are doing, is we're working with Ann Summers to get into the data to kind of really make sure that we're not just seeing a correlation, but we're seeing whether there's cause and effect. So are those stores performing higher because the learning engagement is strong and they're learning more and they're being able to sort of apply that? So how do we do that? Well, we'll do that by rationalizing as many of the variables as possible. We're looking for trend changes within the individual stores. So then that way we're removing variables between each store. One store might be in a better footfall, or be in a more an area with sort of that's more affluent, or even just be in a more prominent location. So we're going to remove those variables so that we can then ensure that when we're experimenting, we're making changes, we can be pretty confident that there's a cause and effect between the learning engagement and the sort of high performance. And that's really what we want to get to within L&D, right?
Brilliant, yeah.
So that's that. We'll talk through another great example. This is another one of our lovely customers, Krispy Kreme, who make those delicious donuts. And what they want to do is they want to improve the production quality of donuts within their stores so that they can reduce wastage. Reducing wastage means that they're increasing profitability. Now, I love this example because we're really getting to holy grail territory here, aren't we? Where the work that L&D are doing can lead to bottom line impact and results within the organisation. There isn't an organisation out there that doesn't want to improve profitability, and this is a really, really neat way of doing it. So again, our data and impact teams will work with Krispy Kreme to create really great learning experiences that can really help improve the production quality of the donuts, so there's less wastage and higher profits. And for me, I get quite excited about this because this is what within L&D we've been talking about doing for a long, long time, and it's great to see those these experiments actually happening.
Definitely. And then we're going to go through the last step 6. So this is your final step. And it's all about showcasing that success back to your business. How are you going to present your findings? How are you going to, visually demonstrate your value and visually demonstrate, what it is that you've achieved, not only as a learning team, or perhaps it's, building a learning culture, whatever that looks like, but demonstrating it back to the business. An award is always an amazing way to drum up love and attention, but also kind of not forgetting to bring in some of that third-party data to really back up what you're saying. And it goes back to what Ryan was talking about around kind of causation, is bringing in things, data points that are happening outside of your team or around the business in different departments to really kind of justify and bring the data to life to tell a full data story. And one of the things that sometimes people overlook is actually how you present that data, how you report on the project and how you report on what it is that you've just done. Because you all know that, your internal stakeholders are busy. How are you going to show them something that's super digestible and that someone can, really take on board and be wowed by? Because ultimately your hard work does need to be recognized. It does need to be celebrated. And I think this step 6 is something that can easily, be overlooked in terms of how actually we market ourselves back to our business. And that's it. That is our 6 steps that we promised we'd go through today. There are some tips for success that I would like to run through as well, in terms of just, final things to remember and take away from today's session. So the number one thing is planning. So don't jump straight into that solution. Analyze the challenge, set your objectives, understand your KPIs and what they are, and actually craft your success plan and identify all of that activity. Don't jump straight into it. Planning is important. Number 2 is calling out possible challenges earlier on. One of the biggest reasons for failure is actually not derailing it earlier on and planning out what might happen. I think we can all be kind of scared of the F word and not want to think about that straight up. But actually, we think it's really important to not just get caught up in implementation, content creation, and the learning experiences straight away, but first looking at actually what could stop you from being successful throughout your data journey or what you're trying to achieve. So step number 3 is collaborate. Ultimately, bring the right people along with you. Get them on board. Define clear ownership of your plan. Step number 4 is all about communication. So actually, who are the key players in the game? Who do you need to get on board? Who are you talking to? Actually communicating with them in the ways that they want to be communicated with, in understanding their motivations for learning, understanding how you can tap into more of that. Number 3, we talked about a lot today, but be experimental and creative. Don't be afraid to test your ideas. Don't be afraid to create control groups. It's okay, actually, if something doesn't go quite as planned and you pivot and try something else. And I think the customers that have that open and growth mindset are actually the customers that we've seen the most success with these steps and with this process. And then finally, point number 6 is just be patient. We all know that change takes time. You'll have to go through different iterations. You'll have to try different things. And ultimately, a great data story is as much about the journey that you go on as is the result as well. So, we should all be focused on the learning here, but actually, not just understanding the content that we create, but also going into, it takes time to do all of that and kind of get those final results.
Yeah, exactly that. So it takes time. So to summarise, we talk about L&D getting a seat at the table. I know it's a cliche, quite an old cliche these days. Getting a seat at the table. And many of the industry reports we all read talk about how L&D needs to do more to kind of align with those business objectives. The reality is that in many cases we actually are aligned. And as you've seen from the exercise we went through, if you can imagine how businesses, you've never worked at, I've never worked at Adidas, if you can imagine how they could solve their business problems, how they can ensure that learning experiences align to those goals, at a company you haven't worked for, you can definitely do it at a company you do work for, where you're an expert in what it is that they do. And the exciting thing really is that, as I mentioned before, this is real holy grail stuff. We're talking about L&D providing results that are really aligned to business impact, business objectives, bottom line, and all of that kind of sort of great stuff. So, for me, it's something to get really, really excited when we start to talk about those measurable results.
Awesome. And then just to close off the session, if you do have any questions, now's the time to put your questions in the comment box, and Ryan and I will do our best to answer any questions that you have. But before we round off, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our brand new Thrive Impact service. So if you love those 6 steps, but you don't want to go it alone, we've actually just launched this brand new service, Thrive Impact, which is for our customers and for our learning and skills platform customers to ultimately boost their learning campaigns and deliver on the goals and success metrics they set. So we provide that extra people power in providing design resource, marketing resource, data analysts, the team that we have internally, we lend out to our customers as well, to be able to tap into that expertise and really, really evidence and showcase value and impact back to your business. So impact's probably the word of the day. You can see it written behind me, although I'm quite upset that it actually is backwards on camera because it flips. So just a little bit of information on our brand new service, Thrive Impact. And if you've got any questions at all, obviously Ryan and I, we're both on LinkedIn. We're both happy to answer any questions that you might have. And obviously all of the information on Thrive Impact is also on our website for you to have a look at, thrivelearning.com. And really important thing is that lots of customers today are using this, obviously, and some of this is an example that we're running through that Ryan spoke about, and Krispy Kreme is a project as well that we're running with them in terms of linking up all the amazing stuff they're doing to build a learning culture and linking that back to business objectives.
Oh, it turns out the writing is the right way around for the people viewing.
Oh, amazing!
Which is good news.
Thank you. Right, we'll pause here and we can spend kind of 4 minutes on any questions, or if anyone wants to showcase the results from their activity earlier on in the session, please do. I'm getting some thank you messages. Charles, thank you, you're very welcome. But if there's no other questions, we'll leave it kind of 3 minutes or so, but then I guess we'll leave it there.
It looks like there's been some great conversations in the chat, which has been brilliant to see. So Charles and Colin, especially, I can see that you've had a really good, enlightening conversation, which is really good. So Hannah's just said, I find it really difficult to remove the variables from the KPIs to really understand how much impact training is happening. Any tips for this? It's a really, really great question. And I'll take you back to the Ann Summers example. So again, they saw a correlation between the highest performing stores and kind of learning engagement. So how do you kind of sort of remove the variables? And we took it down to the granular level, or we and Dan Summers took it down to the granular level. So, your top 10 stores in terms of turnover are also your top 10 most engaged. Well, if we remove all of the variables, the differences between stores, location, things like that, then what we do is we actually think, okay, learning experience might be driving a performance improvement here. So what we'll do is we'll make some more changes and tweaks. And we'll look to see improvements on a store-by-store basis. Rather than looking across the whole sort of group, we'll start to look for improvements within that individual store. So taking it down to almost like the lowest level you can is a really good way to kind of reduce the number of variables that could also be playing a part. So I think that's the general sort of concept. But again, at the risk of sort of keeping it super high level, I think experimenting as much as possible and looking for trend changes. It's all going to be about experimenting and measuring results as often as possible.
Awesome. And Reese has got a question as well, Ryan, in terms of some of the conversations with their customers that he's been having. And staff retention is a biggie. What KPIs would you suggest that they start measuring?
Yeah, so again, it's a really good one. There's a number of different things you can look at for staff retention. Obviously, you can look at attrition rates. You could average length of tenure is another good one. But you can also start to go perhaps a bit more detailed and start to do kind of measure the results of any exit surveys or exit interviews you do, because if you're looking to kind of increase staff retention, then understanding why it is that people are leaving is really important. So not just measuring the actual number of people leaving, but why will help you tackle that and help you really kind of sort of create experiences, not just learning experiences, but obviously a whole employee engagement experience that's going to help people stay.
I think it's, especially for staff retention, it's that mix between quantitative and qualitative data as well, right? In terms of kind of telling that story. Yeah, exactly that. Awesome. One more minute before we head off and actually have some lunch for this lunchtime slot. Any more questions? We could probably answer one more. Otherwise, we will leave you all to have a lovely afternoon.
Fantastic. And thanks very much, Colin, for your comment there. And yeah, look, it's a good point. Many organisations, L&D, might not be seen as strategic as in fact they often are. It's all about sort of perception. We actually think that in most cases, across the industry, L&D is doing fantastic work. They're operating at a really strategic level. So a lot of this is about perception, which is why I think your final point about reporting and ensuring the visibility of the work and impact you've had is, I think, really important. Yeah, and look, especially in marketing, we always talk about personal brand. We always talk about marketing, your teams internally. And I think that is something that we urge L&D teams and every team to do. We really fly the flag for that within Thrive as well. We do kind of loads of show and tells and things like that to really kind of fly the flag for each department within an organization. Yeah, exactly that. Well, thanks everyone for your comments and for your questions. That's been really, really good. Yeah, thank you. We've enjoyed it so much. And like we said, any more questions, please don't hesitate to contact Ryan and I. We love talking about this stuff. So yeah, thanks everyone. Bye. Bye.